The crystal corridors of the Valtharan palace glowed with living light, their bioluminescent veins pulsing in time with the queen's slow, steady heartbeat. Jasmine stood near the vast viewport, her reflection faint against the sight of 3 silver moons floating in a violet sky. She had waited 6 standard cycles for this moment, ever since the ancient star charts revealed the prophecy hidden within their fractured symbols. "Your Majesty," the aide murmured softly, his antenna trembling with restrained anxiety. "The human vessel has crossed into our system." Queen Zerathil of the Velen Empire did not move. Seated upon her elevated throne, all 4 of her eyes remained fixed on the holographic projection hovering before her. The ship displayed was unimpressive by galactic measurements, barely larger than a courier craft, but it carried something far more valuable than any resource or weapon known. It carried a human. Jasmine's fingers instinctively tightened around the data pad strapped to her arm. She had memorized every known record about humanity. They were an immature species, only 3 centuries into space travel. Their machines were rough, their diplomacy clumsy, and their grasp of quantum science embarrassingly basic. And yet, the Devourer had stopped. That unstoppable entity, the force that had erased 17 advanced civilizations, had halted at the borders of human territory. For 2 entire years, it had simply watched humanity's fragile chain of colonies. Then, without warning, it began transmitting. "Magnify the vessel," Queen Zerathil commanded, her voice resonating with a harmonic tone that could bring lesser beings to tears. The image expanded, revealing a ship crudely assembled from mismatched components. Jasmine immediately recognized materials: Korthan alloy, Brevik shields, even Valeran plating salvaged from a war decades earlier. "Primitive construction," the military advisor scoffed. "They weld scrap and call it progress." "That scrap crossed 72 light-years in 4 months, Jasmine replied calmly. "Our fastest fleets would need 6. The advisor said nothing more. "Open a communication channel," the Queen ordered. The hologram shifted, resolving into the image of a human male. Jasmine felt her breath falter, not because of his appearance, which was ordinary by galactic standards, but because of the quiet resolve in his eyes. He matched the prophecy perfectly: dark hair streaked with gray, a scar along his left cheek, and an unmistakable presence shared by history's greatest human warriors. He looked exhausted. "This is Kevin Morrison of Earth," he said, his voice rough yet steady. "I've traveled a long way. I hope this conversation still matters." Queen Zerathil remained seated, unreadable. Protocol demanded a ceremonial greeting, praise for his journey, acknowledgement of his courage. Jasmine had prepared 17 versions of that speech. Then the impossible happened. The aide stepped forward and spoke the name echoed in forbidden texts across 1,000 worlds, the name written in prophecies older than humanity itself. The name transmitted by the Devourer in its final message before vanishing. "Kevin Morrison," the aide declared. "Unbreak Keeper of the Last Stand. Defender of Proxima Station." The throne room froze. In 12 millennia of recorded history, no Valtharan queen had ever risen for a visitor. Yet Zerathil surged to her feet, shouting, "He has come." She descended the steps with impossible speed, ceremonial robes trailing behind her, all 4 eyes blazing with something Jasmine had never seen in her ruler before: hope. "Tell me it's true," the Queen said, stopping inches from the hologram. "Tell me what the Devourer said to you." Kevin's weary expression softened. "It said humanity reminded it of what it once was, before it became what it is now. It called us inefficient, illogical, and willing to die for causes with no strategic value." Jasmine stepped forward without realizing she had moved. "And what did you say?" Kevin's gaze met hers through the projection, carrying the weight of entire civilizations. "I said that's exactly who we are," he answered. "We're the species that flies into danger to save strangers. We held Proxima Station for 6 days with 0 chance of survival so 3 million Valran civilians could escape. We kept fighting when every calculation said surrender was smarter." Kevin's voice lowered, almost reverent. The Devourer asked me one final question. If humanity had to choose between survival and principle, which would we choose? The chamber fell utterly silent. 300 courtiers, generals, and scholars stopped breathing as if the universe itself waited. I told it the truth, Kevin continued. I said I couldn't speak for all humans, only for myself. And I would choose principle every time. Even if it meant death. Queen Zarathal's voice trembled. And what was its answer? It said, then there is still hope for this galaxy. And it left. Kevin exhaled slowly. It turned away and vanished into the darkness between galaxies. His shoulders sagged under an invisible weight. I don't know if it'll return. I don't know if I made the right choice. But you deserve to know. Queen Zarathal straightened, her regal composure returning, yet something within her had changed. The fear that had strangled the galaxy for years was finally loosening its grip. You did more than right, she said firmly. You reminded an ancient terror that some species are still worth sparing. That the galaxy has not fallen as far as it feared. She paused, then added softly, and you reminded us that the youngest civilizations sometimes carry the oldest truths. Land your ship, the Queen commanded, her voice echoing across all frequencies. Let the galaxy know, Earth's messenger has arrived. Not with weapons or threats, but with something stronger, reminder of who we could be. Jasmine felt tears well in her eyes, a human reaction she had unknowingly learned. The court erupted in celebration, but she kept watching Kevin's face, seeing the exhaustion, the doubt, the very human fear that he might have failed. Welcome to Valthera, she whispered, knowing he could not hear. Through the viewport, his patchwork ship descended like a lone spark against endless darkness. It was the most beautiful sight she had ever seen.